This week, I've been showing customers how easy it is to create an autonomous agent using Copilot Studio. Now, this is going to be a step-by-step build, so it's going to be a fairly long one. But at the end of this, you should have a fully autonomous agent that you can use or demo to your customers or whatever you want to do with it. Put it into production if you really need to. And the premise of this is an email response system. So it's monitoring for emails that are coming in, understanding and identifying the intent of that email. And then it's going to pass the body of that email to our general instructions. So we're going to create some instructions that is generic enough to understand any type of emails coming in. And then we can have a set of knowledge sources where it can look up for that relevant information using SharePoint and indexing and the semantic index as well. And once it's gathered that information, then it can send an email back to the sender, which is a structured format of the information that they asked for. Let's get right into it. So we've headed over to Copilot Studio. This is where we can make more bespoke agents and have a lot more control over the agents that we create. We're going to click on the Create button. Notice there are a number of different agent templates now. If you're not quite sure and you're quite new to building agents, I would say have a look at some of these pre-built agents and understand the instructions and what connectors they reach out to. This is a growing list, by the way. But for now, we're going to hit New Agent. We're going to create one from blank in order to create our autonomous email agent. Now, you could have a conversation with this and it'll actually build out the description, the name of the agent, and the general instructions. But for now, we're going to skip this. So we're going to click on Skip to Configure, and we're going to give it a name. So let's call this autonomous agent for email. Let's also give it a cool icon too. So I'm going to pick this one and hit save. Now we need to give it a description. So this is for you and for the agent. So we're going to say to help you with incoming emails in the inbox, you're a research agent and look through all of the questions that are asked in the email and do the research for me. Super simple. Next, we want to head to instructions. Now, this is going to be detailed. So we're going to start off with the purpose of the agent. So the purpose of the agent is to handle unique emails. And we're going to also give it the idea of what the search and response is going to be. So we're going to paste that in. So when we receive a new email in the inbox, you will look at specific knowledge sources, and we'll come back to this in a minute and why that's important. We want to give it an idea and instructions of the formatting and how it should respond. So we've got some formatting and professionalisms, and then handling unanswered questions. You know, you're going to be pointing this at a knowledge base that maybe the answer doesn't live in there, or it's an obscure question from the end user or the sender that we just can't answer. And we could give it some suggestions and some sign-offs as well. So you can see that we're kind of building these general instructions in a structured way. This is the kind of preferred format because as the underlying models change over time, or you want to adjust these agents, you can adjust the specific parts of the general instructions as and when you need to, rather than having like a bulk set of sentences that you might have to read through and adjust going forward. We'll leave the starter prompts because this is designed to be autonomous. So although we could have a conversation with this agent, we're not going to. This is going to be a fully autonomous. And at the top right, we're going to hit create, and we'll fill in the blanks once this is set up. Okay, so we've got our overview pane. We can see all of the information now that we typed into the general instructions and the description. There's a couple of things that we need to do. You'll notice when you first create an agent that some things are blanked out. You've just seen this appear. We want to make sure that orchestration is turned on. This means that the underlying model, and of the time of the recording we're using GPT-4o, is being used to generate the answers from GenAI. A couple of other things that we want to turn on and off for this. One is, it's really up to you, but allow the AI to generate its own general knowledge. Now, because I'm going to put in some knowledge sources that it needs to call from, I don't want it to make things up from its own knowledge base and then send that back to the sender. It wouldn't be good in this case, but again, you may have perfectly good uses that this needs to be turned on for. The next thing I think we should do is add some knowledge into this. Now, using Copilot Studio, you can choose from public websites. So you may have the information on a website somewhere, whether that's your corporate website or an external website. SharePoint, we can use Dataverse now as well. Or if we click on the advanced, we can even call out to Azure AI Search for other like line of business applications, including Salesforce and ServiceNow, which is pretty neat. For now, I've got some knowledge over in my SharePoint. So I can browse files or I can enter the URL of my SharePoint site if I need to. And under customer service, I believe I've got some health information. So you can choose between entire SharePoint sites, folders, or individual file level for your knowledge. If we click on health benefits, I should have this Lululemon global well-being report, and I can click to confirm. And for now, I'm going to add that. But I'm going to add it and then go back in because there's some changes you need to make. When you're building agents, you need to think of the orchestration, so these general instructions that we have at the very top here, as the brain of the agent. Now, when it's deciding dynamically what it should do next, so when the email comes in, it reads it and thinks, well, yes, I need to go and get the knowledge or find knowledge based on that question. It's going to look at its knowledge base and then pick out the most relevant information. Now, to give it a clue is when we go into here, you can write a knowledge description that the agent is going to read to determine whether this is the right resource to send back to the sender. And Copilot Studio is trying to kind of help you on the way, but we might want to rewrite this to be more specific about what it includes. So I'm going to add this to be a little bit more generic because when an email comes in and somebody says, well, can you tell me the most up-to-date health benefits I have? Or can you tell me about fitness? There might be some synonyms of that question or request that's coming in. And we want the agent to pick these items. So you can be as explicit or as general as you want to be. But with anything that you're creating within agents is make sure you're actually testing this as well and ensuring it's picking out the right resource or action you're expecting it to do. The other question I got while I'm in here is this official source switch. When you click this, if you read the description, it's going to say, I'm going to update your general instructions with this. So it's giving this line here, this kind of sentence, and putting that and copy and pasting that into your general instructions to ensure that this is the authoritative resource that you need to follow if you're asked on this type of information. So if I click got it here and we jump over to the overview, you'll see that being appended to the very bottom here. It takes a second to update, and I'll just pause the video to show you what that looks like. So I hit save on the knowledge source, and now we can see down the very bottom that we have that line that told us it was going to add to the general instructions. Okay, so there might be other knowledge sources you want to add. So again, we can go in, we can choose our SharePoint site. In here somewhere, I've got something around customer service, SOPs, and snagging lists. So I've got SOP snaggings. I've got some council templates in here as well, and some specific frequently answered questions. And we can choose those as well. Again, I might want to go in and actually change the description of these, so I'm quite specific on what that information entails. I can also change the name of these as well. By default, it gives you the file name or the folder name that it's pointing to. But again, you might want to change the names of these. It doesn't change the underlying file, of course, but you can call these out as part of your general instructions as well. So you could say, hey, if you get a question that comes in on house building or customer service snagging, you need to point to this snagging FAQs. And you can put that into the general instructions and it'll know, yes, in my knowledge source, I have this name here. It points to this file, and then this is how I use it. Perfect. Let's add that. Okay, so here we've got a number of different items now within our knowledge base. We've got general knowledge turned off. Sometimes as you're doing this, just double check everything is turned on. I think I didn't save this earlier on, so I'm just going to make sure that says change is saved. We've got orchestration turned on. Don't use that, and it's perfect. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do is we're just going to read our general instructions because there's some important parts in here that I've added in, but I didn't explain what it was. So most commonly when I'm helping customers build these agents, it's literally telling them how to prompt engineer and then use English. But here you can see the research and the response. I'm saying that when a new email arrives in the inbox, use the specific knowledge sources to research the questions contained in the email, and then use and in quotes, I'm actually calling out the action name. Now, this action name can be whatever you want it to be. Just for this tutorial, I've decided to keep it there with the name that Power Automate gives it, just so you can see how this is built out. So this is the action. So once the email has been triggered, and we looked up the knowledge source and we're going to send that information back to the end user, this is the action, the end result that we're going to send back to the sender's email address. Now, we're not actually telling it who the sender is going to be or where it's coming from. We're going to dynamically fill out all of the relevant inputs to the agent from the information passed to it. I'll show you what that looks like. So if we head down to actions, we're doing this a little bit backwards, but we'll start at the end and we'll go backwards, is we can add an action in here. And we're looking for something that says send an email v2. Remember, that was what we put into our general instructions. Again, typically you would put that in the general instructions after you set it up. But we're going to pick this Office 365 Outlook because we're using a business version of M365. Again, you'll see some consumer connectors in here as well, or actions. So just make sure you read the entire description because it might be using Outlook, which is the consumer version. We're making sure that we've got permissions for this. And you can see the name has been added automatically. The description again, remember I said that general instructions was the brain. It's got arms and legs. This is where we're telling the arm on exactly what to do. So we're going to adjust that to say something like this operation send an email back to the original sender. Don't wait for a user to respond to send. And the reason why I'm saying that is because normally when you're having a conversation with an agent, it's authenticated as you as the individual, meaning that if you don't have access to the knowledge source, like it's not going to be able to bring that information back because you don't have permissions to it. For an autonomous agent, this is slightly different. So now we want to change from user authentication to Copilot author authentication, meaning that it's not waiting for a response from a human being. It's just authenticated in order to respond on our behalf. And then right down the bottom here, if we click on these little drop downs, we can see the inputs and outputs that this agent is going to be able to respond with. So it's going to send an email back to the user with the subject, with the body. And then we can also adjust the responses as well. So we're making sure that we're not asking, or the agent isn't asking to asking the human being to run the action because they won't be around to do it, right? So we need to make sure that all of that is turned on or off too as well. So don't ask, do not respond immediately. And we want to hit add action. So there's a couple of things to just go back in and check once that is added. Just going to pause the video here. And we're going to go back into the action and just double check some inputs. There's some adjustments we have to do in here as well. So if we go into inputs, this is where you can see like the to field is dynamically filled in with the best option by the agent. We can see this should be identified as the user's entire response. And you might want to adjust this. So we can keep this. It's done a good job at kind of guessing about what we want to do. But we want to change this to say something like respond back to the email address of the original sender. So it knows what to put in that to box. Subject will be dynamic. So it'll fill that in for us, and the body will be dynamic as well, of course, because it's going to look up at our knowledge base, read the relevant information, summarize that, and actually send it back to the sender. There's also some optional settings you can have a look at as well, depending on your use case. So there's these kind of little hidden drop downs that you can click into and configure it even further if you want to. And then outputs. Notice here that we don't have a description. So the output should be provide the details or detailed response that you found. And then lastly, scroll right down the bottom and there's a little tick box that says send a message immediately after running the action. And we want to tick AI dynamically generates a message by default. So again, there's some other things that you can do in here as well. Let's leave it at that and then hit save. Okay, so that's our end goal setup. This is the action that we're going to send all of the information that we found back to the sender. Let's head back over to the overview and then scroll down. And now we want to start to look at triggers. So let's click add trigger. We're going to look for something that says when a new email arrives, v3. So when a new email arrives, v3, remember Office 365 Outlook. So this is the business version. We're going to ensure that it's got permissions to use that. Yes, indeed. And this is where we're going to almost kind of frig what we want to do here, just to make sure that it works reliably. I'm going to use this as part of my demo to my customers, so I don't want it triggering on every email every time I show something. So I'm going to put in some conditions in here so it just triggers on an element that I know that it should trigger for. Now, if you're using this production, you might be having this to monitor a shared mailbox. So it's looking at every request that comes in and then trying to answer those. In my case, that I'm going to be a bit more kind of stringent. So this is really up to you at this stage, what you want to do as part of the demo. So what I'm going to do is any emails that are coming in and it has a subject of health. So that's going to be my trigger, for example. These are optional. When I type in health or contains health within the email and I send that to the inbox, it knows that's going to be the trigger for me. And I'm going to leave everything else blank. I think I might want to monitor just a particular folder. So let's click in inbox. And that's all I'm going to set up at this stage, I think. But again, if you're going to use this in production, you might want to have this all open. Or if you're using this as part of a demo, then have an appropriate trigger or a condition that you know it will trigger on. Right down the bottom here, we can see that we're going to invoke the actual body of the email. So we're going to ingest all of that and understand it, hit create trigger. And then we just need to make some adjustments as well within Power Automate, just to ensure that it sends the appropriate body of the email back to the Copilot for processing. Okay, it says time to test your trigger. Not yet though. Let's just double click into this and just check that we've got everything that we need. You'll notice it opens up a new tab into Power Automate. This is a super simple flow. We've only got 2 items within here. We've got the email that we just set up. So anything that contains health in the subject line, and we're monitoring the inbox. And then this is going to send the body of the email. So remember we had body in here as well. And we're going to send this to the agent, to the general instructions, so it understands the body, and then look up the information from the knowledge source. Notice up here that you can choose whatever agent you want. This is creating it automatically for me, but usually when you go back in here, you'll have a little drop down. You can choose whatever agent you already have set up if you want to send a trigger to a specific agent. For now, that looks good. We're going to publish that, make sure it's saved. Okay, flow is good. We can close that down. And here we can see our trigger. Okay, so we've got our trigger coming in. We've set up our general instructions. We made sure that we were telling the agent in the general instructions to use this action to respond to the sender's email. Remember, we don't know who the sender is. We're going to dynamically fill that out. We're also going to make sure that the emails that are coming or coming back out to the sender is formatted in a nice way. So we're going to use HTML. It's going to go away and create that for us, by the way. And we're going to make sure we're professional and we be detailed enough to provide sufficient information. Again, if you've got an appropriate structure that you want it to write the email in, like we could have another hashtag in here in the general instructions that tells it, like, this is the structure you need to apply to those emails going out. And I think we've got everything in place that we need. This is a really simple autonomous agent. I'm conscious that in some of my other videos, I've gone to the extreme and there's some more complicated agents that we've created there. But this is a really simple one that you could just spend a couple of minutes, have this part of your demo, being able to show this to your internal employees or your customers and say, look, we've got a fully headless autonomous agent that we could use to better serve our customers. Again, at the very top here, you can click on the knowledge tab to see all of your knowledge sources. Topics we're not going to cover today, but this is where you can basically have a path of different conversations or even ask an end user if they were using like the chat. This is headless, by the way, so we're not using the chat in this case. And then we can ask them for certain questions like, what's your name? Being able to store that as a variable. What's your address? Store that as a variable. So you're not asking the same questions to the user over and over again. This is for another topic, pun intended. And then the tab actions, we can see our end actions that we're sending out. You can have multiple actions in here as well, which could be that I don't know the answer to this question. You might want to trigger an action to ask a human being what the answer is to the question, right? And then again, we can have an appropriate description within the action so the agent knows that if it doesn't know the answer to the question, go and send that to a human being. So we can add as many actions as we need to do. Activity we'll come back to in a minute. This is where we can monitor for the behavior of the agent, make sure it's triggering correctly. And we've got analytics and channels that we're not going to need. Now, to make this autonomous and make sure that it works, this is super important. So listen up. We need to hit the publish button in order for this to work autonomously. If you don't hit publish and you try and trigger it, it will just sit there and will do nothing. So make sure you hit the publish button. Okay, now we've published that. Let's go and see if we can trigger it. So what we'll do is head over to our emails. What I'm going to do is just connect into my emails on this demo account. And we're going to send an email to ourselves, right? I could do this outside and then email this in, but just for this demo, we're just gonna email ourselves. So we'll see the email come into the inbox, and then there'll be a trigger picked up through Power Automate, send that to the agent, look up the general instructions, and then send us an email back. Remember, the trigger that we had for this was just something in the subject field that said health, just so it's not triggering in every email. And I could say something like, please can you help me, or please can you give me more information about health benefits? Thanks, Graham. Or thanks, Corey in this case. And we're going to hit send. So it's going to go out and come back in. So we'll see this in a second into my inbox. Okay, so that's me having an email come in. Like I said, if this is in production, you're probably going to have a dedicated inbox that is monitoring for this. And in a second, we'll see this trigger. So what we can do is a couple of things we can do, actually. We could go into our triggers and we could test this. So we could send another email and make sure the test goes through. Some of these triggers are based on polling times as well. So I'm just going to double check that this isn't set for polling. And you'll know because right down the bottom of the parameters, it'll say how often you want to poll for. Okay, so that looks good. Let's go back into our agent and check our activity. So the activity tab tells you activities that have come in. Oh, I've just got another email come through. Here we go. So this is the email that's come from the agent. We'll check that in the activity tab in a second. I maybe was too quick because I am doing this live. And this is the email that we got back. Now, this is pretty basic, right? It's given us some summary information from the Lululemon report. Now, we weren't very specific in the information that we asked for. So it's just given us a summary. Maybe I should have been a bit more specific. Oh, it sent me another email in. Okay, so we need to just double check that. Let's go into our activity tab again and hit refresh. Here we go. So we've got 2 that have come in, and we can see 1 was incompleted. So this is really good when you're building the agents, just like I'm doing here. We're trying to figure out whether this is working appropriately or not. And we can click on these steps, and then we can see in the activity map, the email is coming in. So this is formatted as HTML. That's fine. So this is our trigger. It's then looking at our knowledge sources. So of the 4 knowledge sources we've set up, it picked this one. And then it took that information and it used the action, which was the send an email. And it dynamically filled in the inputs and the subjects and the body of the information, which is pretty cool. We can also click on the activity map and click on transcript. And this allows us to see the conversation that's happening behind the scenes. So in this case, it says, appreciate your query, but unfortunately I don't have any specific information at the time. Interesting. So maybe it wasn't that activity then. We're doing this live. We've got incompletes. So maybe we need to go in and make some adjustments. Something failed. It wasn't putting in the to box correctly. So there's some tweaking I think that we need to do. And I can tell you exactly what my issue is. Oh, gotta love live demos. It's in a loop. Remember, it was looking for health in the subject line, and now it's emailing itself over and over again. So don't do that as part of your demos. Let's make sure that is stopped, and we're making sure that we're not kind of looping emails around. Always good to test. So I'm keeping this in the video. I think what we could do as part of this demo is, rather than it going into the inbox, why don't we set up a new folder? And this is just for test purposes for a second. We could have autonomous, or just call it auto, have a folder in here, and we'll create a rule that will move any information coming from the inbox into there that contains health. And then we know that our demo is working then. Ooh, pray the demo gods. Here we go. So let's create a new rule. Select a folder called not inbox. We want auto. Different folder, auto. Okay. And let's ensure that it's picking it up. Any emails from Corey Gray? No, we don't want to do that because it'll just loop again. So any information that has the subject includes health, move to auto. Okay, let's see if that works. And we'll try again. So new email. We're going to send this to Corey Gray. Or maybe I should do this externally. It contains health. Please provide detailed information on the health benefits. Thanks. And then we're just going to adjust where it's looking for that. Okay. Change it from the inbox to Ordo. And we're going to save that and publish it. And we're just going to check that our email now went into the health folder, or the auto folder. It did. And we're just waiting for our response. Okay, so I did pause the video for a little bit. I fixed the looping effect that I've caused my own problem, but this is good. I want to keep this in just to show you how I think and how I troubleshoot from my silly mistakes. So a couple of things I've done. I changed the subject line just so it's static for a minute. So each time it's not picking up health and then kind of looping again. And what I've also done is I'm just checking that everything is being filled in. And I noticed that it was going through and checking the knowledge sources and picking the right one, but either they're not filling in the information or not even sending it to the action connector to send the email. So the things I did was over in Actions, I changed the description. So again, it's not a configuration per se, but it's a language thing because we're using a large language model under the covers here. And all I've done is to say, once you've collected the information from the knowledge source, use this operation that sends the email back to the end user. I could probably use proper English here, but it understood kind of the premise of that, and now it's working in. So if I go over to my email, now you can see that I had this health information come in that I've just put into another folder. We probably didn't need to do that in the end, but now it's come back with a fixed subject line, just so I stop the looping. And then it's giving me this more concise answer back as well, which is really good. So it's giving me some statistics from the Lululemon. That's a really hard word for me to say today. And it's bringing back. So again, I might want to kind of rework this to ensure that there's no citations and this random link that it's got the information from. Like, we don't need that in the email, so we could actually go back and adjust some of our instructions to say, don't include that within the email, or I want this structured in a way that removes the citations and the links. Unless the links are valid, of course. If it's going to like a public website or an internal resource, so you can keep these in so the sender is able to see where the actual resource is. But for now, that seems to be working. And if we jump back to the activity tab, you're able to see under the transcript now the autonomous agent actually sending the information back. So it's kind of an internal conversation that's having with itself before it actually sends out that email to the sender. Well, I hope that you enjoyed this session. Hopefully now you've got a working autonomous agent that's able to automatically trigger, understand what the premise of the email is, and send the information back. I think it was really good for you to see some of the troubleshooting tips as well. I spend quite a lot of my time in sort of reiterating or reworking some of the instructions, both the general ones and the actions and knowledge, just to ensure it does the right thing. And sometimes for more of the complex agents that I create, I spend quite a lot of time articulating the general instructions so it knows exactly what it needs to do. And it's not just a kind of woolly set of instructions where it might make the wrong decision as well. So make sure that you're working and making sure that you're looking at what the output is giving you and try all different sets of scenarios to ensure that the agent works appropriately. But for now, that's all we got time for. Thank you very much for your time. I hope you enjoyed this session. If you are watching this on YouTube, make sure you like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.